There's no way to walk away with a more foundational understanding of the word. It's nothing like that. Everything about it is at a certain point surface level. It stays on the surface. It stays in that emotional high or that emotional low, and it swings you back and forth between them. There is no depth to something like that. There's only the psyche being fragmented or harm occurring as a result of it, because that is abuse.
I'm Todd, and I was naughty. I did everything wrong. I got kicked out of art school, I drank heavily, and I looked to other religions and versions of spirituality to get fulfilled. The problem was, I was in the occult and I didn't even know it. My life was a wreck, and I had to learn what it meant to have a relationship with Jesus.
And I'm Laura. I was super nice. I did everything right. I got saved young, went to Moody Bible Institute, got married, and followed the Christian rules to having a good life. Problem was, that formula didn't work. I had to change how I related with Jesus.
At the end of the day, what I learned is the very simple truth.
Jesus is the answer,
and the only one that will ever actually fulfill you.
Naughty
versus
nice.
And welcome back to Naughty versus Nice. Of course, I'm Todd.
You're taking it back. Okay.
I took the of course is now mine again.
Right. And I'm the co-host, Laura. See, I can do that too.
You co-hosted it. Okay, I'm the co-host, Todd. There we go.
Of course you are. Okay.
But I'm
here.
There we go. Okay, that's Kelly over there doing stuff and clicking buttons. Last episode, we talked about a bunch of different stuff, probably pissed off half the internet. We were talking about Christian nationalism, cultural Christianity, this mashup that we kind of see happening, how it's been a long time coming. This isn't just a new thing that kind of sprung up out of the ground like Oompa Loompas. It's actually been kind of happening for a while now. And we have, through things like Bill Gothard and Ron Luce and the Shiny Happy People, both season 1 and season 2, whether it realizes it or not, are kind of shining a light on this and how it's hopped along through like the last 30 years, 40 years, at least through American Western culture, and kind of now it culminating in this idea, coming into the limelight and seeing it as being kind of like this idea whose time has come.
I got distracted because the dog was barking again. I feel like you're like, you're up. I'm like, what do I say now? What did you just say in a summary?
A summary is the idea that the Shiny Happy People in it maybe inadvertently shined a light on how this has been building up. So it's not really much of a mystery to see where we're at right now, how we got here.
Yeah, I thought that was a very interesting thing to have watched it just this past weekend to see. Of course, we know about, other times in history that there's a law enforcement of Christianity or whatever, that's not gone well. But just to see a lot of the trends in that video, I was not aware of that movement, but I alluded to it in the last episode and we've talked about it. I had some experiences like that, but it was a much safer organizations. But the philosophy had bled in, this idea of becoming a soldier. I felt for a long time that my purpose in being saved was to save other people. And it created an unfair sense of responsibility and merit. There was, we would go to these evangelism project things and they'd send you out in the streets and you'd go and witness to people. And then everybody would come back in the evening for this kind of emotionally charged experience of music. Again, nothing really wrong. It's just emotional. And then people would get up and how many, did you lead to the Lord? And I remember thinking, well, we only led one person to the Lord. So I have less value. Like it was, so you were very much a member of an army, it felt like. But those same principles of there's nothing wrong with having music. There's nothing wrong with communicating with youth through their emotions. They're at a very emotional time in their life. And I don't think that's a wrong thing, but it's pressing on them. I saw that in the documentary. There's this pressing of, we're going to feel this emotion. If you don't feel it yet, raise your hands. If you don't do, this on and on. That was a big, strong thing.
Yeah, I did attend and acquire the Fire Ron Luce event when I was in high school.
Was he there? Sorry, I have to ask.
I have no idea who he was.
Okay.
I remember enjoying the music. Remember enjoying, there is a feeling and that communal worship when there's a large body of people together. Mm-hmm. It was always one of my favorite parts when we would do the youth group camping trip and we would go to the Alive Music Festival and stuff. It was great. But there for sure was, part of it, I was in the hallway flirting with boys. So I missed a lot.
You were acquiring the wrong fire.
I was stoking the wrong fire for sure. So that's what I was doing. But I remember it was like a big hype show.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, they were like, build you up, get you excited. So I was saying, like, earlier after we had watched the show, I could see, like, I remember them talking about missions trips. I remember vaguely something about like the camps and stuff, but that feeling of like, well, I want to go to that too. But we were poor. So I was like, well, that's not even something you bother asking about. So for me, like, it's like put directly out of my mind.
You were
I was
never
going to say,
going.
sorry, babe, but you're still poor. So
Right.
married the wrong guy.
But you could see how they get these kids like excited and stuff. And then the kids go home and the parents are like, woohoo, yay, Jesus. I want my kid to want more Jesus. So sure, we'll find the money and like send them to more of these things. And then 20 years later, you're watching your kid on a documentary roll down a muddy, puke-filled hill while a 40-year-old man is screaming in his ear. Like, it's crazy, like, what came out of it. But then seeing, like, how that message is still continued of, like, building the warrior force and, you know, what did they call it? It was a movement of...
What, the battle cry was that?
Yes, the battle
Yeah.
cry. Yes. And how we're still seeing that today, but the message is milder.
Or less like that venue, maybe. You know, like there's not an organization that I'm aware of like Teen Mania. That doesn't mean there isn't one.
If you think about it, they no longer... Teen Mania, you rented out coliseums and stuff, and like all these youth groups from, you know, hours and hours away would drive to you. And they just cut out the middleman in that whole organization. What do they do now? They go to a college campus where the kids already are. There's already thousands of kids on these college campuses. They go to them. They get people there that agree with you and don't agree with you. A lot of people who just come because they want to see what's happening or what's going to happen or what they're going to say for the emotional shock value of it. So they just went to where the kids are instead of the kids having to be brought to them.
I thought it was interesting because there was quite a bit of spiritual manipulation, at least from the parts, because I came in a little late when you guys were watching. I missed portions of the first episode, but it was kind of like if a leader felt like there wasn't enough of a response, they're going to, you know, Jesus wants you to do this. You know, there's all this spiritual... Anytime there's a framework set up where if I don't do what this person is saying, I displease God. That's what was happening on more of a political agenda and more of an organizational framework. But you see it with marriage, and you see it with pastors, and you see it in this kind of a place. And that should be one of our red flags.
Well, that's like red flag number 1, 2, and 3. There is no situation, with the exception of Jesus himself, who speaks with the authority of God. Everybody else, nobody speaks with God's authority. You know what I mean? Because it's all been done and all summed up in him. The Bible is about Jesus, not Jesus and Carl the plumber who lives at, 432 Central Avenue. It's not about both of them. It's just about Jesus. There is no co-person that, is in association with it. He is the one who all things and all authority are wrapped up in him. Once again, that's why he's king right now, ruling from heaven in his kingdom. And whenever people start speaking on those terms, speaking with the authority of God, or making you feel, they don't even have to say it out loud. You'd be surprised what just, presence, putting your hands a certain way, and your body posture and how you choose to speak to people and the word choices that you use, the impact and effect that can have, especially when you're 40 years old and you're talking to 14 and 15-year-olds. Anything you say is going to come across as having the weight and the authority of God, especially when you have everybody else looking to you to be the leader of the organization or the institution or whatever, where thousands of kids are. It's not good. I don't understand why, it's not that I don't understand it. I understand it. It's just, I guess it's shocking. It shouldn't even be shocking to me too. Like, of course people are going to abuse power. You know what I mean? It's like, I can't believe people are abusing power. This is crazy. Christians would never do that. Are you sure? Because there's a lot of people professing the name of Christ that just aren't believers, And that's the part I think that I wish that people would see when it comes to this stuff.
There was, I was trying to think of different litmus testing. Like, when you hear this, it should make your ears perk. One of them was, I was trying to think, you think you would hear it more, but I don't think you actually hear when people teach and preach them say, God wants you to. Like, I noticed that a little bit more and when we were watching this video and stuff, God wants this, or God's going to do this. That kind of authority to speak on his behalf is usually, I think it doesn't mean something wrong's going to come after it, but it is certainly something to listen for. Because I thought about it for myself. Like, when I teach, do I say that? I don't think I do. I think that that's really got a certain false arrogance or something behind it. At least it should perk your ears up. I think I said it in the last episode. I had a list of things or ideas. If you hear the terms, we talked about it already, but battle ready. If there are morality to-do lists, like there's a prescribed formula for how to have the perfect Christian life. If there's factions by behavior. So when I lived in Colorado, the granola state, it was, if you breastfed or you bottle fed, like all of a sudden that in the church made you one better and one not good. But the big popular one also was homeschool, public school. It doesn't matter which one you're for. Both sides kind of prepare and speak of it like one is better than the other. So then you have a faction. So anytime you're in a person of leadership, creating levels, creating groups, creating a grading system, that's a red flag. I was trying to think, of course it's me. So I would say anytime there's a forced emotional setting, I think you should beware. I don't like when people make me do something. I know this makes me sound really like an American, but I don't like if I'm in a church service and they're like, now everybody has to raise their hands, or everybody has to kneel, or you need to come forward, or you need to confess. All of those things, I think that should be red flags. So maybe it's because I don't like emotions, though.
Well, I know, but they are, because if somebody's going to be having once again, it's a relationship. If somebody's going to be having a natural experience or a natural something, it's not, by definition, it's not forced. It's just part of the process of that. I would even also add on there the idea of concocting or manufacturing a false emotional experience, or I should say, what I was talking about before when I went to that one cult. They would manufacture a situation by which you would have a genuine emotional reaction. Then they would assign a value to that emotional reaction before you've had a chance to process it. They would tell you what it meant, and they would do it over and over again. And saying it out loud now, for a person who's never been through something like that, you think, well, that's stupid. I would never fall for that. Really? Are you able to be rational when you're so angry? You know what I mean? You ever been so angry that you almost can't control yourself and you say words that you'll really regretted later? If I had you do some super sophisticated thinking, you'd be able to do it in that moment. Really? You know what I mean? So it's like, that's why I say people like, I can't imagine ever being betrayed. Are you sure? Because I'm pretty sure you have. I can't imagine being so angry in such an emotional experience. I couldn't think clearly. Are you sure? Because it sounds like you don't even know how to human then. This is what humans are. And that's why we have to be aware of these things before going into them. We want to ideally be aware when these things are happening to us. And once again, like I said, I was even aware, not all the tricks. I actually learned a few when I went to this thing, but I was aware of some of them, and I knew what they were going in. And coming out of it, a little bit of it got me. It really did. It took me a while to put it all in its proper place in my head and to make sense of all of it. I was definitely goofed up for a few weeks after it, if not a few months,
Were you and Kelly dating then? Or
No, this is before that.
Oh, okay.
This is before
I was going to
that.
ask her if she noticed.
No, while I was there, some girl, her boyfriend, ended up calling the cops because he couldn't get a hold of her, and then police showed up at this compound. It was literally a mountain compound, and all this stuff happened. Dude, I'll tell you about it sometime, just off air or whatever. But like it was wild. There was just some crazy stuff. I almost said something that.
I liked to stay home on Friday nights and watch Friday night videos with my brothers and do crafts. And that is not a lie. I have never had the exciting life that you have. So, but I am not sad about it. So I always say, hey, I never got injured sitting home and reading a book.
Part of one of the recipes that's necessary to have an exciting life is stupidity. That definitely is gonna help you out and help you go real far. So it's the that artificial crafting and force an emotional experience, and that's something that I think is a red flag. Another thing is money. That was another thing the cult did. The way that it talked about money as though none of them had to deal with money on a regular basis or were there in order to get paid. Like they were above it. But then they would put this inordinate amount of pressure on you, the individual, regarding money, acquiring money, how you viewed money, your relationship with money, that kind of thing. So when somebody says, oh, it's $5,000, you could get $5,000 right now if you had to, couldn't you? Like if I had a gun to your head, okay, you don't have a gun to my head though. That's not what this situation is. You're talking about me paying for the privilege and experience of going to your, like teenage youth boot camp. I'm sorry, boot camp or whatever. I'm trying to think, not the other one that Hitler used. Boot camp, not torture center. I just lost my place. But whenever money was talked about, it was very unlike how normal people talked about money, and it was presented in a way where if you had to always to the extremes, then you'd be able to. And it's no pressure for them because you're the one calling grandma and grandpa, trying to get them to come up with an inordinate amount of money because they love you. They want to. This is something you really want. You've never really asked for anything before. Well, I guess I'll go ahead and write you a check. How much did you need again? 2,000? Well, I guess I can go without eating for a week, or 2 weeks or whatever. But it's stuff like that. These are red flags. It's not that giving's wrong. It's like you said, it's not that it's wrong to give, give back and give money and do all these things. But, when the guy's got a $3,000 tailored suit and he's pressuring you for money, I feel like, that should really be the other way around, depending on what you're wearing,
Did you have any further experiences like that, Kelly, or is that just a one-time thing? I don't remember if you said you went twice or.
That it was the only time I went to Acquire the Fire, which is the one specifically from the show. But there were other teen events and stuff that I did with our youth group growing up that were similar to that. But they all had that same feel. And you have that emotional moment and stuff, and it's like chasing the dragon. That's what you want more of. And so you have to seek that out. And I always, knowing what I know now, there's so much more depth and understanding in the learning and growing and the truth of who Jesus is and the biblical truth. And knowing that makes so much more sense and is so much more grounding versus these emotional highs or these pop-up revivals. I'm not saying they're bad, but how many people are that come flooding down to the stage are still a Christian a year later? Were they caught up in the moment? Were they truly saved? You don't know until plenty of time has gone by. I feel like I remember, at least for me, and it took me a long time to understand, it all felt so shallow. It was lots of memorized Bible verses, and then they would have this weird competition thing where you sat on a buzzer and they would start to read the Bible verse, and whoever stood up first and their buzzer went and you could complete the Bible verse word for word, you got a point for your team. But there was never any discussion of what the verse meant, what it meant in context to the passage or the book it was in. It was just rote memorization. And I remember that being pushed into us. You have to memorize this. You have to memorize this. It's so important that it's all memorized and stuff. And there was no understanding there. I was I don't get this. I could see looking back how easy it was for me to walk away in my 20s and not pay attention to any of this stuff because there was nothing to stand on. There was no truth to stand on. There was no understanding. I had Bible verses memorized that I couldn't tell you what they meant in relationship to anything. And the other extreme was going to events like Acquire the Fire, which was all good music and singers and lights and smoke machines and all that stuff. But there was nothing in between the sandwich bread, though.
There were pretty big extremes too, these huge, big feelings or the Bible verse wars. Did you ever do sword wars? I did not grow up in the church. I know everyone would assume that I did, but I didn't really. But when I got saved, I started at a youth group, and they would be like, "Have you not ever?" Maybe it was at Moody. People were like, "Haven't you ever done Sword Wars?" And I'm like, "What? What is that?" I'm like, I'm a boring person, and even I haven't done that. But it was that someone would call out a passage, and whoever can find it in their Bible first.
Yeah, we did that. I remember I won candy because I memorized all the books of the Old Testament in order.
There's some value. I mean,
That'll
it's not
save me.
completely wasted. It's just some weird stuff that we I don't know, we put into those group times. Anyway, I was glad I had not been subject to that. But I immediately felt pressure when I got saved to learn the camp songs, because we were at youth group, we sing songs and learn where things were in the Bible. Incredibly motivated to make sure I knew everything that was fitting in. I know I was being a good mind. What is that? I can't see your whole hand because your microphone.
I could hear you through your microphone tapping as you were talking.
Did I?
Yeah.
It might have been something else because I have my hands in fists. I don't know. Doesn't matter. No one else needs to know about that.
I can hear you.
But you didn't go to anything like that, Todd, besides your own little cult meeting, which is like the darkest version
You
of what we're
went to
talking
the
about.
weird Christian camp in Wisconsin.
I did. There was a church that I kind of grew up in, but that's like loose. But there was like a summer camp, and I got a really bad sprained ankle there one time. I did archery and got my first bullseye, and then I got a concussion there really bad playing. It was like hockey, but it was like with a massive inflatable ball that everybody thought I was making up until I found one of the pictures proving that that's something that we actually did. But I didn't do anything like that. I guess it was technically like a Christian summer camp, but we had like Bible study or whatever, and we did like some other, I guess, weird things, maybe not weird, but like I didn't have experiences like the Ron Luce stuff or anything like that. I did go to like a super mega church. They had like a youth group, the only youth group I ever went to when I was a kid. I didn't even know what youth group was until I was probably, I don't know, 14, maybe 13, 14. And I went 2 or 3 times. I couldn't tell you separate memories. I think it was more than once. And I couldn't even tell you what we did. I just remember there were a lot of people there. And that was about it. And we were all outside. And that was about it. That was about all I could really tell you about it. So, no, overall, I mean, when I watched that documentary and I was seeing the stuff that was going on, the only thing that I could relate it to would be more cult knowledge and information that I had about cults, about how they operate, what they've done. There was a period of my life where I did like some studies on cults and how they indoctrinate people, how they capture them, how you deprogram them. And so I learned, that werewolves, everybody thought werewolves existed in the United States still up till about, 90 years ago. You know what I mean? And I had a book on the 9 most recent court cases involving people accused of being werewolves. So I have this eclectic mix of interests, it's just not sports. You know what I mean? It's not like regular guy stuff. So I learned how to deprogram people from cults like when I was 24 and stuff like that. I don't know why, but, I guess it's come in handy, here and there.
What really hit me about the documentary was seeing the commonality between an abusive relationship and how they treated the kids. Like it's the same, which of course I'm blank now, but it's all
patterns.
Yeah,
Patterns?
it's all the same. I am having a hot flash and my brain shuts down. I'm like, I don't know what's happening. No, it was
It's that abusive. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's all the abusive patterns that are the same. Like the one kid, he said the only reason he didn't go home is because right away he felt like there were people there that had decided that he couldn't make it through. So I was like, they made you feel that way on purpose. They probably made all of the kids feel that way as they came through to make them work harder. I know when you go into the military, a lot of times when they do the background check, they purposely find something where it questions whether or not you can be in the military because it makes you want it more. And so then it's put on the table as like, well, we need to find out more about this, but we don't know if you're a candidate. That's when you want something the most, is right as it's about to be taken away from you and stuff. And so like seeing that pattern in there, there were the 2 African-American kids who the girl was braiding the guy's hair. Mm-hmm. And they were always told that you self-segregate when you're together. And so they were trying to not get in trouble for that. And so they went to a private room for her to braid his hair. And then they got in trouble for being in a private room and saying that was inappropriate. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's the standard. No matter what you do, it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but they didn't know that because they were working so hard to get it right. They didn't understand. Well, none of us do when we're in it, that there's nothing to get right, because it doesn't matter how right you do something, you're still wrong in how you do it and stuff. Yeah, seeing that and hearing the stories, it's like, oh yeah, there's that. You can never do anything right. There's that over there. You know, the push pull, the taking it away just to give it back to you at the last moment. And, you know.
And the intro to it is love bombing, the
Yeah.
emotional pressure of an experience, and then they do experience it because it's obviously now some kids, as they're spanning the camera, I'm like, oh, you weren't feeling it, you're just pretending. But a lot of kids were, and that's that love experience. It's a trust experience because they seemed safer speaking from the stage at the initial concerts than they did on the camps. So yeah, you think, well, this is still a good guy. He had a lot of appeal. He was very charismatic, as all cult leaders are.
Well, and they had all the children doing the work, right? They're interns, but they're learning the technical side and whatnot. And you had the one girl who was on the worship team. If you're 16 and you're really into music and you play an instrument and you see somebody your own age on stage leading a worship song to thousands of people, you want that.
Mm-hmm.
You want, like, that person seems so much cooler to you in that moment. And it's like, how did she get there? How did she learn this? I want to do that too. The punishment too. She said, I forget she had kissed a boy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she had gotten kicked out. And so then she had to like beg her way back in.
Mm-hmm.
And when she came back in, they humiliated her with the music video. Yeah. I was like, oh, yep, there's punishment. You're always punished in some way. And one of the kids said it at one point too. That you can guarantee if you messed up, there was always a punishment coming.
And they felt watched. I thought that was very interesting that they knew they were being told they were being watched to ascertain where, if they were going to make it, if they were going to be good enough. And so now you've got this, the straightening of the back, okay, well, I want to, fit in, and the pressure of their peers, without realizing it, they all just want to fit in. So they exist in a community that pressures them to conform just because they're all there in the same place.
I think that one of the things that stands out is that a lot of these experiences and a lot of these things, there is no way to walk away with a deeper, more trusting, more accurate theology. There's no way to walk away with a more foundational understanding of the word. It's nothing like that. Everything about it is at a certain point surface level. It stays on the surface. It stays in that emotional high or that emotional low, and it swings you back and forth between them. There is no depth to something like that. There's only the psyche being fragmented or harm occurring as a result of it, because that is abuse. That's what was happening to these people. But one of the things that it made me think of was like the segue into creating a culture like that in order to create the warriors that you need in order to wage the war for cultural Christianity. Well, how do you know when you're successful at cultural Christianity? Everybody's wearing a necklace that has a cross on it. It doesn't matter if they mean it or not. Now, remember, we were talking Mark of the Beast concept, go along to get along or be a true believer. You can be a true believer in a cultural Christian society, or you can just go along to get along, but you have to be one or the other. And one of the ways that you know that is by wearing the adornment or the signets of that system. So wearing a cross necklace, or, going to, I have written down here, like making sure that you never miss, holiday church service or something like that. Whatever it is, all the words to the popular number one gospel song that's going around right now, or whatever it is, or the top 10 chart, or you don't have a secular music charts anymore. It's only, Christian music or something like that. Whatever it is. But these things are not, there's no depth to these things either. You're not creating a system of depth in order to prepare people for a culture that has depth. Everything stays on the shallow surface level. Everything.
Yeah. Did they at any point have like any kind of, I don't know, like Bible classes and stuff? I don't remember seeing that. Was that in that training?
In between cleaning the toilets and telemarketing?
Yeah, the telemarketing was really crazy because they were calling to raise more money above and beyond what it cost them, I think, to be there.
The tuition to go there, yeah.
Yeah, they were getting very, very free labor. Let's put it that way.
You know what it reminded me of? I don't know if you ever saw the Netflix documentary on like the military schools for, if your kid's a bad kid in the 90s and early 2000s, and you could send them to these special schools that would teach them like routine and discipline and stuff. The same patterns of behavior were being shown in those schools. If you watch that documentary and then you watch this one, it is the same story. Both of them with the lie of helping these kids, but at the same time harming them physically, emotionally, mentally. Oh, you said something that was interesting. This big push for, them to be like the upright Christian and follow the rules and whatnot. But every one of them ended up on, how did you word it? Like very
More on, for lack of a better word, on the liberal side. Like the goal of that whole movement was to have a very ultra conservative group of people entering into pretty much the political scene. And what ended up happening is that they all ran from that in the opposite direction. I mean, none of them are axe murderers or anything, but they're far from conservative. And I think I don't blame them. I feel like they did a terrible thing to them, and shame on the church, because
Well,
there are good people, or quote, there were people that they were pointing to that were a part of supporting this movement and this organization. And I think they should have done better.
Well, I actually have an answer for that one. So if you look at it, let's say 10,000 kids go running through that thing. Did they really need all 10,000 of them, or did they just need 200 of them? 200 real believers that they really trained, that really went through everything, that really became true believers, that they can then shape and mold over the next decade, whatever that looks like, through whatever program they have, through working for a senator or doing whatever. You know what I mean? You can't send 10,000 kids to intern for senators on Capitol Hill, but you can send 200 over the course of a 8-year period, and it's more than one senator or whatever it is. That would be my guess. This is a best guess, man. That's all I'm saying. But so why were they torturing everybody and doing all that stuff? Because at a certain point, it wasn't about all of them. It was about refining and trying to find the standouts, the ones that really came out above the line, above and beyond. Those were the ones that they put their arm around and say, you're special. You're not like all of them, in group, out group. Let me introduce you to the senator. You can really go places. All you got to do is just carry this, what you really believe deep down, the battle cry forward, blah, 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 blah. Once again, I'm guessing, but if I was a psycho, you know what I mean, running a thing, and I wanted to take over a country through a cultural and political movement, that's what I would do,
I guess we better watch out for you then.
Yeah.
Like I said, I study cults and stuff like that, like for no reason, except for now, I guess. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, any final thoughts?
I think one of the main things to keep in mind with all of this is, as we've talked about, when you go back many shows, the occult side. We talked about some red flags, at least in this episode, and things to watch out for. One of the red flags, that there's a difference between something seeping in, and I would still say it's a red flag, versus like an activation arm or a platform or a pillar in your program. And when you have a baked into your system occult concepts and occult principles, that's a red flag. And I see a lot of dualism going on within the cultural Christianity stuff, the youth army brigade thing, Ron Luce's whole thing, his structure of the way that he puts his whole program together. It's not lost on me. And one of the simplest ways to show that is the idea of in-group and out-group. So not only was the entire organization, all the kids that were at the torture happy fun camp, they were part of the in-group, and the rest of the pagan world was the out-group. But the idea, maybe, I'm just saying this is how those things are. Inside of that camp, there was also the in-group, which were the people that were closer to leadership, that were pulled out from the unwashed masses and told they were special, and then the unwashed masses that had to wade in, poop water up to here, and that kind of thing. And you'll see it repeated over and over again. It won't just be in the structure of leadership. It'll be baked into the core concepts of its operational mechanism, its philosophy, the way it even shows up in the world. And one way that I can kind of show that is cultural Christianity would be like this a very passive system being implemented and on kind of the coattails of this Christian nationalist concept. So the Christian nationalism idea, that's the active one. That's the punch. That's the forward moving thing. That's the arrow going on its way to the target. Whereas the cultural Christianity would be the milieu in which it swims, the passive part of the culture that gets slowly shaped and changed as a result of conforming to this new power block, this new power structure as it comes in, as it gets implemented. And so we still see that dualistic concept even within the larger framework of what's going on within these systems.
I agree. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You can always tell when it's about 8 o'clock because I'm like, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can see my eyes get drippier. My thought is watch the show. I really would encourage people to watch it because you'll see patterns and you might recognize things you're still saying or hearing. And it's worth it to look at it, I think. Spend the time.
I thought it was interesting too that the battle cry was picked up, it has a new package on it, but the core was the same. And the Micah woman, because she started the group reaching out, this was my experience in this horrible place. And then other people reached out and was like, this is what I experienced. So it created that in group and that out group of those of us who did not experience it. And now her battle cry is to tell the world about what this is. I'm not saying it shouldn't be exposed. It absolutely should be. Like, it's horrible that this stuff is happening to teenagers in the name of God. But the battle cry is still the same. She's still fighting the fight. It just has a new direction on it. But the core is dualism, in versus out, us versus them.
Crazy, man. It's just crazy how Satan really does rule the world in a certain way. It's nuts. It's crazy to see all that kind of stuff. So, if you have kids in youth group and you go to a great church and they would never ever do anything to hurt your kids, and for a fact it would never happen, watch this Shiny Happy People season 2, anyways. And I don't know, see if some of the language is a little familiar, if you know what I mean. And if you are seeing some things showing up there, and you're seeing some similar things showing up in your youth group, go talk to them. Go find out what's going on. Could be an honest mistake. Everybody goofs up. But it also might be undergirded of philosophies or ideas that you didn't know that some people in leadership might have. And it could be being implemented in something like youth group. And you're the one. You want to know who's going to stop it? Who's going to find out about it? It's you. You're the one that does it. So you need to, get educated, find out what's going on. And, hopefully a show like this, the result of it isn't just that those people went through what they went through, but they can help educate people and hopefully just prevent stuff like this from happening in the future. Holy smokes. Like, just Ron Luce, you're a psycho, dude. I mean, based on this thing, all I'm saying. So
yeah, the documentary is not flattering.
Yeah,
no, it's definitely
can't imagine
not.
There's a better view. I feel like we've got a good idea who we're looking at.
So if you I don't know, if you went to Army Kids Youth Group Camp and you think that maybe we know what we're talking about, or maybe we don't, feel free to drop us an email. And thank you very much for sticking with us this time. Don't forget to like or subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'd appreciate it if you do that. It'd be nice. We've had a few subscribers lately, so that's awesome news. And thank you very much, and we'll talk at you next time. Hey, thanks for listening to Naughty versus Nice. If this episode hit home for you, or, got us stepped on your toes a little, but in a good way, go ahead and like, follow, and leave us a review. It helps us out way more than you could possibly know. We're on all the socials at Naughty versus Nice. That's VERSUS Nice. And if you believe in what it is that Laura and I are doing, you can definitely pop on over to patreon.com/Naughty versus Nice and give us a hand there as well. Thanks for walking this road with us as we have these conversations, talk about these wider concepts, and discuss what it means to be followers of Christ. We really appreciate you joining us, and we'll talk at you next time.